Yep, ready to go.
Okay, we'll get started. I call the meeting to order, and we're going to go right to Patty. Hi, Patty. Good to see you. Up, you're on mute, but that's okay. Good to see you. If you would walk us through your budget presentation, if you're ready.
1 minute. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Just to let you know what the Senior Center does, our primary goal at the Council on Aging is to maintain and improve the quality of life for our older residents by providing information and referral to local, state, and federal programs. Some of the services we provide are community outreach, transportation, information referrals, health screenings, fitness, exercise, community education, and volunteer opportunities. We're also an intake site for fuel assistance and also the Millis Fund. We also provide assistance with food stamps and health insurance counseling. Do we want to go into our accomplishments or right into the budget?
Why don't you just give us a brief overview of the accomplishments and then go into the budget? That's fine. I mean,
Okay.
actually, I think it's very germane to go over the accomplishments this year in the sense that it's been a very unorthodox year. And I guess I personally would like to hear how you've managed to cope. I did review it and saw that your numbers are down, but that would be anticipated. So I don't want to put words in your mouth. Please give us an overview.
Okay, most of our numbers did go down. The number of seniors served, the calls logged, transportation. But what we did notice is a huge increase in our outreach services. And basically that was from case management. We had a lot of calls from out of town family members concerned about their elderly parents. We did a number of cold calls to residents, just asking them if they needed our services. And we saw a huge uptake in reassurance calls, just giving people a call, letting them know that we're there if they needed us. Like I said, transportation was down, but our paratransit reimbursement, we only saw a $1,000 decrease in that. And that's the monies the town gets back for us providing transportation services. And the reason for that would be because that runs on a fiscal year. So that's July 2019 to June 2020. So we were off to a great start. We stopped transportation in March, and I think we started up in June. So for only to see a $1,000 decrease, we were on a pretty good track, but because of the pandemic, it wasn't as great as that we would have expected. Would you like to jump right into the budget?
Yes, yeah, go ahead. Unless I'm going to have people hold off on questions unless I see somebody chomping at the bit or raising a hand, but you keep going. And if we need to interject, I'd ask the board members just get my attention. Committee members, sorry.
I did submit a level funded budget for fiscal year 22. In the salary line, the only major increase you'll see is in the driver's wages, and that's due to the minimum wage increase. It went from 17,564 to 21,645. My expense line has pretty much stayed stable. Any questions?
Anyone? Okay, keep going, Patty. You're on a roll.
Right, I guess. It's gonna be quick. I did submit a above level service increase. We would really like to keep the senior center open till 4 Monday through Thursday, just to address the growing needs of seniors. And we're requesting to be able to be open till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We're going to need another position. I also submitted a couple of scenarios, a level funded budget, and it just shows you the hours and the staffing. And I also submitted the above level request, just so you could visually see how the staffing would work. Currently, with the level funded budget, we would only have 3 staff, which is really not sufficient for us. That would mean the center would be closed at 2 o'clock, 3 days a week, and only open till 3:30 on Tuesdays. So I just wanted to give you a feel so you could just see it right there. With 3 staff members, that would be the possibility.
So just to,
Yeah,
Patty, I'm going to jump in real quick. I just want
Sure.
to make sure everybody's looking at the right document, and I see Deirdre is sharing it. So it's the first table that in the top left corner, it says level funded, and it's the staffing cost for that is 115,000. Am I correct?
Right, and that's the level
Yep.
funded budget that I submitted.
Okay.
So what we did is, if we were able to add a staff member at 29.5 hours, we would be able to keep the senior center open 8 to 4, Monday through Thursday, and Friday regular hours. And we understand the 29.5 would be a little bit, maybe it's not in the budget and you couldn't be able to do that. So what we also did was submit some staffing possibilities. And that's on the other page, Deidre. It's just some possibilities. If we were to have another position, 17.5 hours, it shows that we would only be able to be open 3 days a week till 4 and 1 short day on Wednesday. We're just trying to give you an idea of, what our staffing would look like.
Okay.
I was asked by Jim McCaffrey to show what we're going to need in the future if perhaps we ever get a senior center, and that's Monday through Friday, 8 to 4, and that's the last possibility. That's the goal of where we want to be someday, maybe once we get a senior center.
Okay.
So I think just giving you all that information, just so you can see just how much another staff member would mean to the senior center.
Okay. Patty, I have a quick question.
Sure.
And I'm not sure it's that critical, but I did kind of note when I was reviewing it, and that is that I think it's the new position is called an operations manager. And I'm curious if calling that person the operations manager drives a particular wage. We're sensitive to increases in budget. And so I just wanted to make sure that that's the appropriate title for the duties that you envision, and I'm not 100% certain how the wages or how a duty description generates into a wage band. I've got some background in that, but not certainly in the local, within the town. So I'm just curious, do you envision that person being a manager? And I think maybe I'll follow up with Mike Kaczynski after, later for more follow-up.
We're trying to look at what we really need for the senior center. We need someone with some computer skills that can do clerical and also assist with programming. Programming is something that we really need here in Millis. Currently, I'm the program manager, the director, and the department assistant. So we're trying to get another position there that can assist with programming and also do the clerical work. I also submitted an operations manager job description that just describes what we're looking for in a person. And what I did is that person would be the operations manager. And I think I classified it as a department assistant 3.
Okay. That addresses my question. I'd like to hear from anybody else on the committee if they have some questions for Patty.
Patty, so you're the only one really there other than, I mean, it's really to give you a break as well, so that you're not wearing so many hats and that you can be more efficient with the position. So you can get more things done for the seniors.
Correct.
Okay. And
correct.
is there a need, as far as population, have you, has our, I know, I think I already know the answer, but has our senior population increased that much to warrant the facility being open more hours? Or is there such a demand?
Absolutely. In the past 10 years, our senior population's increased 48%. 2010, it was 1,586. 2019, it's 2,344. The need's there.
And as far as funding any of the programs, if you increase programs or have somebody there to be able to create programs for the seniors, how will those be funded?
What we're also looking for is $3,000 in our expense line, and that will alleviate my formula grant. Currently, I use my formula grant for postage, for printing, and that would free up some of the funds from my state's formula grant, which is $17,508, to be able to afford the programming.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay. Anybody else?
Mr. Chair, if I might, Kathy McInnes.
Certainly. Go ahead, Kathy.
What do you consider are the growing needs that you called it, Patty, for? What are the needs that would be done in the extra hours?
What we're seeing is a great need in fitness, exercise, education for the seniors. Right now, we're really servicing the older seniors, and would really like to be able to address some of the younger seniors' needs. But with our limited programming, we close at 2. We're not able to address the younger seniors. And that would be like Medicare planning, financial planning, things like that.
So are you familiar if any state agencies volunteer to come out to the communities and have open sessions to discuss the issues you were just talking about?
Absolutely. The Mass Bar Association has great presentations. Blue Cross Blue Shield has great presentations for younger seniors, and those are free.
Have you had them come to Millis?
We have.
Oh,
we
good.
have.
Do you talk about the increase in the senior population? How has your membership, what are those numbers been in the last few years?
I can give you our newsletters. We've increased our newsletters quite a bit. Probably, do math in my head, about 600 per year. And I can see that number increasing. And I just lost my train of thought.
Well, I can see it increasing with the Glen being up the street.
Absolutely. I mean, just in this past week, I've had 10 requests from the Glen Ellen people asking for newsletters.
Can I say something, please?
Who was that?
I'm Bert Lannon. I'm the chair of the Council on Aging Board.
Hi, Bert. Welcome, and please go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, the membership is actually in the Friends of the Council on Aging. And like as Patty alluded to, we send out what, Patty, over 1,000 newsletters a month?
1,575 households.
So the membership dues go to the Friends of the Council on Aging, who then fund many of our programs. Patty, what are some examples of the things that the Friends do for us?
Our Friends fund our Thanksgiving, St. Patrick's Day. If we need entertainment, they'll provide that. They typically provide probably about $5,000 a year towards our activities.
Right.
Exercise programs, yoga.
And part of that $3,000 in expenses, you're talking about mostly postage, right?
That's all
Which is the
posted.
cost of sending out that newsletter, which goes out to everybody in Millis when they turn 60 automatically. Right?
Whether they want it or not.
But what was I gonna say? Yeah, and we try to encourage these folks who get the newsletter, whether or not they pay dues to the council, I mean, to the Friends, by putting a little notation on their mailing label indicating that their dues have come due, which is a reasonable amount. I think it's like $6 a year. But many folks are nice enough to send extra contributions with their annual dues, as well as memorial donations and other things like that. But that mailing out that newsletter has gotten to be a real cost. But, you know,
$9,000 a year.
yeah. And we also take great effort to make sure we're not mailing it out to people who have moved or passed away, because you compare that mailing list to something the town gives you, right, Patty?
Yes, anybody turning 60, I have the census, so we automatically add them to that mailing list.
You've also been able to compare it to the voting rolls or something, so that we're not sending it out to people who've moved or have passed away.
It's the census, yeah, and we try to keep an eye on the obituaries.
Yeah, and volunteers fold it in every month, and then we always have our eye out for to make sure we're not sending them out to people that are no longer either alive or in Millis.
Yeah, Pete, may I ask a question, please?
Yep.
Craig.
Go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, thanks. How many, I know it's been a rough year, but putting aside the COVID year when you're fully open, how many, and I worked for the Y back a while back, and we used to count individual unique visitors, how many individuals would come in, not how many visits, but how many people are typically in there at a given time, and how many unique individuals would come in, like, let's say over the course of a month?
I can tell you in 2019, we saw 718 individual seniors. We do keep an unduplicated count of anybody walking through the door or any services provided. 2020, it was 617.
Okay. And is that anybody who just walks through the door, or is it just because I know I had to sign in when I went down there, and I just wonder if I got counted? Not that I'd mind, but I'm still a few years away, though I do get your newsletter. So, which I enjoy. So do we think that number would increase in the same facility with more hours? I know a new facility, all bets are off, but in the same facility, we think more hours would provide opportunities for more people to participate, or just better serve those 600, 700 that do participate now?
With the additional hours, Craig, we're going to be able to offer additional programming, which will address a greater need. We'll not only be addressing the older seniors, but the younger seniors. So I expect that number to rise.
Okay. And do you partner with the library or the rec department for any programming? I know the library's got that giant television screen in the Roach Brothers room, and the rec department doing any fitness programs. Do you do any partnerships like that?
We do. We work closely with recreation, and anything the library needs, we're there. Or if we need something from them, they're there. We partner with both departments.
Okay.
Patty, Craig, are you all set?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you.
Patty, you have a couple of capital items in your budget request. Can you talk about those?
One is the flooring in room 21. I have to say we've done quite a bit of work down at the senior center. We've painted, we've put new floors, new rugs, but there's only one room left, and that's room 21, which is the lunchroom where people eat. That floor is above and beyond its useful life, and we're looking for $8,000 to have that repaired. And then all the floors will be done down there.
Okay, well, that was actually my next question, is because it seems like we're chipping away at flooring down there, and I wanted to know, is that the complete requirement? And you've answered that.
And my question, Pete, is the flooring holding up that we have done in the past? I know we had the water leak issue that caused the problem. Has that gone away? So the flooring that we've replaced is now lasting?
It has. The repairs they did, I believe it was a year and a half ago, has taken care of those flooding problems.
Okay, and then a couple of vehicles, Kathy, excuse me, Patty.
Yeah, currently we have a 2011 handicap van. It's 10 years old. It only has 42,000 miles on it. But it is 10 years old. DPW is great at doing anything we need to have it fixed. But I think for safe transport of seniors, it would be a good idea to keep our eyes on it. I'm not saying we need it now, but it's just to put it in everybody's mind that eventually we're going to have to replace that. Our friends group has already raised $17,000 to put towards that expense. And like I said, it doesn't have to be done this year, but we just have to keep our eye on that, but that's going to be an upcoming expense.
Yeah, that bus is, it's really not a very pleasant vehicle to be in. I've driven it. I've driven on many field trips as far away as Gloucester, downtown Boston. There's no seat belts in the individual seats, and it's just noisy, and it's hard to heat, and there's all these straps that are flapping around all over the place. So like Patty said, I mean, it still works. As a matter of fact, I'm taking it over to North Attleboro tomorrow to have the lift get its annual inspection. But maybe sometime, hopefully in the next year or two, you would be able to replace it with something much more comfortable and just pleasant to behold.
Well, I would just, thanks, Bert. And I would just add that I'm on the capital planning committee. I serve as the FinCom's rep on that committee, and we're meeting tomorrow. So I'll make sure that hopefully you've done what you need to do, which is get it on the list, and I'll make sure I'll double check that just to make sure that we are looking at the out years. And so I think there was one more vehicle, a smaller vehicle, a cruise.
Yeah, that's the smallest vehicle. It's a small, very small sedan. You'll seat two people in the back seat, but very, very tight.
And that's one of the most popular vehicles, especially for Boston trips. It's more comfortable. Like Bert said, those big vans, they're really clanky. And, you know, if you're going in there for treatments, and people are more comfortable in the smaller vehicle. So we do use that a lot. Actually, that vehicle is I think it's 8 years old, and it has more mileage than both our vans. But people really request that, and we try to give them what they want and make them comfortable for their trips into Boston.
Yeah,
Patty, I think what we really want to hear is, does it need to be replaced as bad, worse, or not quite as bad as the van? I mean, they're all competing priorities and limited resources. So what we really need to hear from you is, how bad do you need it, and what's going to happen if you don't get it?
I think if I cancel this detail sheet, I put that as not as urgent as the 2011. I think I asked for that in 2024. It's not as urgent as replacing the 9-passenger van, which.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any questions from the committee, please? Before we're gonna talk about the HCA request, I believe.
I just had one quick question.
Go ahead, Doug.
I don't know, either Kathy or Herb. With respect to the newsletter, would it be reasonable to sort of contact those people on the list and see if there was any preference for receiving them by email as opposed to mailing them? And then would that save enough money to be worthwhile? Or Is there not enough people that receive it that, you know, have convenient, regular access to email?
I just started doing that with the requests from Glen Ellen. I asked them if they'd rather have a hard copy, if I could email it to them. I believe out of the 10 people I got, 8 were fine with the emailing, but 2 wanted a hard copy. So I think I'm just starting to work on that, but it
Right.
is something we should be looking at.
'Cause I know I'm getting it, and I would be more than happy to receive it by email.
Yeah, I think we have to do
And
that.
I'm in Craig's boat. I'm not quite there yet, but it's approaching more rapidly than I would care to care to admit.
We as a board have talked about that, and I think what we'd have to do is really do a survey, especially with the older folks who may not have ready access to a computer.
Right.
But yeah, we've talked about it as a board, and certainly it's something that we need to look at a little more.
But for the future, you know, as new old people come into the fold, like myself and Craig,
Yeah.
you know, as we go forward, more people will be computer and internet electronically literate and be more accustomed to that. So, you know, it could be something that gets sort of phased in over time, and then eventually I imagine that it would be all digital.
Yeah.
But there's costs associated with that too. So
we're finding that more and more where I work, more and more people are switching to the digital magazine, even just because of environmental concerns and one less thing coming in the mail.
Okay, Patty, I hope you're prepared to talk about the host community agreement funds request with regard to the marijuana impact funds.
Yes, I will be. What I did was I did put in for wages for a program manager in the hopes, you know, to educate our seniors. We could have programs in the afternoon to educate our seniors on the benefits of medicinal marijuana. I think it would be very beneficial, better than opiates. And we would like to open up that conversation with them, but we would need staff to do that.
Okay, I just want to let you know, I certainly don't mean to do this to be harsh, but I would say that that particular proposal, at least in my opinion, I don't speak for the board, but I reviewed that with a lot of initially skepticism, in the sense that one, it seems like potentially promoting not necessarily use of marijuana, but use of the company that's selling the marijuana. And I would think that would almost be a marketing function that would be their responsibility. And then even when I got past that, I'm still questioning whether this, it almost seems like a full-time equivalent is what you're proposing for that. And I'm not sure that would make the cut. Now, that ultimately, I think that's the select board's decision, but I'm just giving you some feedback for you to think about. Whatever the select board decides to recommend, that's what the finance committee will, consider and discuss and vote on. That's just my 2 cents. And I would, there has been a little bit of discussion amongst the board, I think last week, on the same thing. Would anybody else like to speak?
Yeah, Pete.
Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, I had the same concerns Pete did. 45,000 is the second largest request, only behind the school resource officer. And now that I hear it's a staff position, I'm even more concerned about it, because I thought it was to put on programs and bring in speakers or something. But hiring a staff member just means we're going to have a full-time, more than, a full-time position, which would pretty much, actually, that 45,000 would allow you to be open the 6.5 hours a week. It's equivalent to being open 6.5 hours a week for somebody whose job is to market marijuana to seniors, which, when you phrase it that way, it really does not sound like a job the town should be in. So I would suggest you think of a different approach to that, because while the selectmen will recommend it, the finance committee is going to while the selectmen will propose it, the finance committee will make the motion and the recommendation to town meeting. And again, I can only speak for myself at this point, but with Pete, I'd have a very tough time recommending that use of those funds, especially when the same $45,000 would get you open 6.5 hours a week more.
Yeah. And just to, I don't mean to pile on again, Patty, I'm not trying to be harsh, but we do need to give candid, frank feedback. And one other thing to consider is I believe the HCA funds are only for 5 years. So it's temporary at best.
And quite honestly, I'd have less of a problem if it was presented as we want HCA funds. And I'm not saying this is going to fly with the select board either, but we need HCA funds to provide services for seniors so they can not sit around participating in recreational marijuana because they have nothing else to do. I think that's the way the rec department and other places are funding it. And then just for staff hours and expand the hours of the place, the center. I'm not sure that is going to fly with the select board or if that's even a reasonable one. But to me, that's much more palatable of a presentation than hiring a full-time educator, keeping your center open the same number of hours and staffing up that way. But realizing that in 5 years when the HCA goes away, that position would have to be considered or removed or funded through normal operations. Is my 2 cents on it.
Okay, I'm going to give last call for comments from the rest of the committee on either this or anything else that that Patty's presented. And Patty, I'll let you have the last word. Nothing heard from the committee.
Thank you for your input.
Okay, Bert, thank you for joining us. And Patty, as always, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Okay, next is Nate Maltinsky. I think I've seen him. And Nate, the floor is yours. We're going to talk about the warrant article discussion for Community Preservation Act.
Good evening, Nathan Maltinsky, Chair of the CPC Committee. We have one confirmed article for town meeting and a potential article for town meeting, which we have a meeting tomorrow night, and the committee will be voting on to accept or not accept this article from a high school senior. So our article that we do have confirmed is for $1,469. And this will be for the phase 2 of the Henry F. Walling map project. And basically we supplied $600 to the library and for this project. And they're looking for the balance to digitize and make prints of this map that's somewhat rare, depicts Millis and Medway from the mid-1800s. So it's a very worthwhile project. It's a low in funding request, and I think the library did put some money towards it themselves. The second article that we'll be voting on tomorrow is a high school project by Brian Nichols, Rich Nichols' son, and he is requesting $10,300 to erect 2 dugouts at the high school baseball diamond. He has gotten permission from the school committee and powers that be to construct this, and this will be part of this senior project. We will vote on it tomorrow, and we typically do not approve a project on a 1 meeting basis. We like to get more information from everyone involved. We asked them for some more additional information, a drawing, and some letter confirming that the school committee was on board with this. So we will vote on that tomorrow. We did, Camille did put a place marker in for this. And so we will give you an update. Camille will give you an updated email if we do vote in the affirmative for this article tomorrow night via Zoom.
Okay.
So those are two articles we have right now.
Okay. I looked at the proposal for the dugout, Nate, and my only comment would be that the trend in dugout design or safety is more netting, not less. And I think the drawing shows that the fence on the field side of those dugouts only goes up 4 feet. I did a cursory review, so I would just recommend somebody look at that and make sure that safety is paramount and it go the full height, floor or ground to underside of the roof.
Right, that's a great idea, comment, and I believe I did see that also, and we will address that issue with Mr. Nichols when we talk tomorrow night.
Yep.
Good call. The other article that we have, actually, there's 3 articles actually. One is a annual laundry annual money article that we have in front of you. So we have to put money into each designated fund balance each year. So that amount will be $25,098. And that will be into the historic resource reserve, community house reserve, open space reserve. And then there'll also be $80,000 added to the budget reserve. And then $12,549 for administrative expenses for Camille or any other advertising that we have to do for any kind of projects for the paper or for any printed materials. So that will be an article that will also be in there. And we do this every year. And our revenues have gone up substantially with the new homes in town. And the state, we've actually got some decent money from the state for our funding also. It's not great, but it's something. It's around $40,000, $45,000 that we get from the state every year. It's been as low as $28,000 and as high as $50,000. More and more communities are getting onto this CPA. I don't have the number offhand, but there's quite a few communities. All the money for the CPA that's given out comes from the Registry of Deeds. And there's a small surcharge on the residents of Mills also. But the funding comes from the Registry of Deeds. So anytime you make a real estate transaction or you have a deed restriction or something on a property, that's where the money does come from.
Nate, if I may just interject. So the committee members may have received a letter from the Norfolk County, Register of Deeds or somebody from the county, and the letter comes to us addressed to our address. And I believe it's because we're on the FinCom and they have a record, and they send us basically the disbursement of funds to all the towns within the county. So if any of our new members have received that, that's what Nate's talking about. It's basically the disbursement of funds from those deeds, and it tells us exactly. And I think there's like 15 to 20, probably more towns that participate in CPA. Is that right, Nate?
That is correct. Any town that's in the CPA, they list what they get. You can range anywhere from 1% to 3% as far as a surcharge on your taxes. Medway does a 3%. Mills does a 1% with a $100,000 deduction on your property value. And then we also do have a senior restriction on our surcharge. So that's to benefit the seniors that may be on a fixed income. On average, I think a household would maybe pay $50 on surcharge. And the projects that we do have to be prevailing wage, so that somewhat drives up the cost on some of the projects, but it's well worth it. Instead of having to do override or anything like that, we can achieve a lot of projects completed without any kind of surcharge.
Okay. Any questions for Nate?
I do have one.
Go ahead, Greg.
Thank you. We have one piece of borrowing outstanding for land purchase ballpark. Is that like, what's that standing at right now? About another 200, 250, something like that?
The borrowing right now is actually for town hall for the restoration. We did have a borrowing for the Dewey property, which is at the corner of Exchange and Orchard, but that has been paid off. Let me see if I can find it here quick.
I'm sorry, I was thinking that, yeah, so town hall, what was that about? What was that total borrowing? I can't recall.
450,000, I believe. Let's see here. Digitize preservation. For some reason, I'm not seeing the list here. Memorial Fields. We have the Memorial Fields project, which is still in process of being completed.
Is that what's reflected on the long-term interest, long-term debt right there in the middle of the page Deidre showing right now? That 25,000 in principal and the 11,075 in debt interest.
Yeah, it doesn't have town hall on it for a description.
Perhaps you could just check on that and send an email to Deidre for us.
Yeah,
Sure.
I'd like to know how much is outstanding on that borrowing, or any other borrowing we have. In other words, what money have we committed already? That even if we commit no more money going forward, the balance would be this, you know?
Right.
So we're in great shape there.
Yeah, we're in pretty good shape. Yeah, I think that's the 25,000 is the only is the interest from that.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, could we also
Hi,
find
Kathy.
out when everything is paid off?
Yeah, I wanted the whole debt schedule on any of the debts from the
Okay,
CPA.
thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. That-
Committee on myself did also ask accounting to give us some updated numbers for our meeting tomorrow night and for tonight's meeting, but I don't know if they have these in a computer system yet. I think they do them manually, which I was told that may have changed. So
So excuse me, hi, this is Carol Johnston, the finance director.
Go
So
ahead, Carol.
right now, the CPA has one project outstanding. It's a CPA VMB masonry. As of June 20th, 2020, the outstanding principal was 285,000 on it. It's being paid down every year. The principal is the 25,000 that you see on his schedule. And the 11,000 or 12,000 is the interest that will be paid next year on that.
What was the beginning balance on that? Was that 425 like Nate thought, or 450?
I don't know what the beginning balance was on
Okay.
that particular one. I can find it out for you.
Okay, no, it's not that critical. All I'm interested in the remaining life, and that's easy enough to do because you can take 2,850 and subtract and divide it by
Oh,
20.
it goes until 2034.
Yeah, 11 more years or so, 11, 12 more years. Yeah. Okay. We can start it over again.
Okay, Kathy, anything else? And anything else from any other committee members?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Sean.
Hey, Nate. This might come up for discussion for tomorrow, but I know Brian was hoping for an April timeframe to start the project. Do you think there's any concerns about this having to be after town meeting about whether it'll still move forward or if that's not a concern.
I'm sorry, what's your question again?
So I know Brian initially, when this was proposed, was hoping to start and finish in April, and we had discussed about waiting for town meeting approval before starting the project, and if there's any concern with the time frame, I guess.
It's a catch-22, because the funds won't be appropriated if they pass till town meeting. So it's kind of tough. Someone would have to front the money for the project.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good question, Sean. Okay. Thank you, Nate.
Okay, one other thing, there was some discussion Monday night about the possible 61A property on Village Street and use of CPA funds for that. And that would also have to be an override for us. And it is potentially a possibility, but there are a little more restrictions on what we could do with the property as far as recreation or open space for that property. So it is a potential, but we haven't been contacted by the select board or anyone else yet on that. So just FYI.
Yeah, I got a question on that piece just for a second too. Do we have to decide?
Can I hold on, Craig? I'm gonna hold off on discussion right now on 61A, just because I want everybody to when I ask everybody to watch the hearing, and we'll address that later when it comes to us. So if you have something that you think is overriding of that guidance, go ahead.
Yeah. I'll email Nate and I'll ask him directly.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
Great. Thank you very much, Nate.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. All right. Next on the agenda is the select board's budget priorities. So that memo is attached to the meeting materials for tonight and the agenda that Deirdre sent out. It says it's from Mr. Gazinski, but I think we can, unless he feels compelled that he has to read it to us, I think we can look those over on our own. We certainly can discuss them. So they're on page fortunately, I can't tell what page they're on. Page 30 of the attachment. I'll just go through them and please stop me if you have questions, but expand the hours of the senior center. And it doesn't say that these are in priority order, so I'm just going to read through them. Those are certainly questions that we can pose. Expand the library operations to 7 days a week. Expand recreation department hours. Develop shared services with the school department for HR director and an IT director. Establish a budget for road construction and maintenance outside of Chapter 90 grant funding. Increase tree trimming and the removal budget. Additional DPW staff, 2 persons or 2 FTEs. Additional SB and TA office staff hours. Additional treasurer's office staff hours. A municipal facilities director. Those are presumably midterm or short-term objectives. And then there's for the long-term OPEB funding, stabilization fund level at 5% of the operating budget, and open space funding. So I'd ask for your comments on that. It's hard to tell, frankly, it's hard to tell, what the priorities are. I mean, they're doesn't say that they're necessarily prioritized. So I'm not going to read into it more than that. Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I would say that in general, the board tried to put a priority level in order of priority in general. Obviously, some of those items realistically are probably more midterm items, but they did try to put an emphasis on items towards the top of the list that they felt had more urgency. And I'd be happy to answer any specific questions that the committee members may have in regards to, any details of that or any other questions that the committee may have.
My comment, Mike, would be, it looks like the municipal needs looks to be budgetary needs and not necessarily capital items, with the exception of the road construction,
Right.
which then tells me, I asked the question last week and we may discuss it tonight or not, but we will be discussing it in the near future, is the issue with the water. And of course, that comes out of the enterprise, but certainly I would say that's probably the most pressing budgetary need that the town's facing based on the information that Mr. McKay has provided.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I believe that the board was focusing on the more operational than capital in this, and certainly they put a lot of stock in the recommendations of the capital planning committee as far as priorities on that end. But they wanted to outline some of the ongoing operational needs that they felt needed to be addressed by the community.
Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Mike. Go ahead, Craig.
I'm just surprised to see stabilization at 5%, since that's one of as a lowest, in that second tier of priorities, because that's a policy decision the selectmen made and voted that would be our stabilization goal, to see them prioritize it below everything else on that list in the long-term objectives. And Jody's the queen of stabilization, but we have a whole policy that's written about it, the selectmen signed off on and created. While several other people on the committee were concerned that it was too restrictive, the Board of Selectmen at that point did push it through and did vote on it. And now to call it a long-term goal to be at 5%, I thought that was a pretty clear and deliberate plan. It seems that, are they now saying that 5% is a suggestion, not a mandate anymore from the board?
No, they still hold, they still hold at the 5% at a minimum. I think the point they're making is that as our budget grows, our annual budget, operating budget for the town grows, that the stabilization account needs to grow with it. So in the long-term perspective, it doesn't mean they'd want to ignore it for the next 5 years. It just means that's something that, we have to keep addressing year to year to make sure that we maintain at a minimum 5%.
Yeah.
And the OPEB as well, obviously, is an item that not only do we need to focus more heavily on moving forward, but we need to keep an eye on, where those liabilities are and make sure we track those on a year-to-year basis.
Yeah. And my concern goes back to just having done the budget forecasting worksheet, and I know I shared it with Carol, that every dime you add to operations just cuts time off of how long we have before we run into budget crises. And there's a lot of operational items on there. Is my only thought on it. I'm curious to see the rest of the numbers, but 46,000 we just saw tonight for the Council on Aging to get to that number. I'm curious what the library and the rec department, those other ones would be, and whether they'll all be proposed this year. Not to say they're not important, but.
Well, I think there'll definitely be some priority discussion. And I agree that I don't think we can look at, putting forward all these items in a single year. That's not realistic, but I think we need to look at all these needs and look at setting up having that discussion about priorities and setting up a plan to move forward. I think, not to speak for the board, but it's my understanding that was their basic intention here.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Jody.
I will say, since I recently wrote the Finance Committee 2020 annual report, and I did put the stabilization fund calculations in there, the fund balances in comparison to the target balance of 5%. So for the past 2 years, the stabilization fund has been over 5%. Through the end of fiscal year 2020, we are about $80,000 over the target balance. So at least that's not an imminent need. But yeah, that kind of jumped out at me on the priorities, because at least I looked at it and said, okay, check. We've we've accomplished that so far. But as we know, if our budgets grow as a town, then we have to continue to put more into that stabilization fund in order to maintain that 5% threshold. So that's just always something to keep aware of as well.
Well, Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I would also think that, while we have the ability to do so, that we might think about, since 5% is a minimum, and from a policy perspective, that's where it's supposed to be. And in the past, we have actually because we had it at 5, we went below 5 because we needed to pull some money out. Then that puts you basically in hock, and you have to make up. Then you're sort of pressured to some degree to make it back up to 5%. I would think that while we have some flexibility, that we might consider actually boosting that so that it was above 5%, giving us a little more flexibility in the event that we run into some crunch time.
And we know we're going to be going into it for snow. Well, there's a high likelihood we'll be hitting it for snow and ice unless other budgets come in shorter. We just approved an overspend on that one already. And typically stabilization is one of the places we go unless there's free cash money or underspends in other budgets to hit. So there's a possibility that we will be reducing it. Walking it back from a high likelihood just to a possibility. It's doing the math in my head.
Don't we have a lot of open space already?
Don't know, not germane to the current item on the agenda.
Well, it says open space funding.
Oh, on there, yeah.
I guess my question would be to Mike then, would be what exactly is that? What's the thinking behind the long-term objective on open space funding?
Well, I suppose that would depend on who you ask. And I would say that is certainly a somewhat subjective topic that, is part of a policy discussion. I think that, the thought of open space funding was just that it has to be something that's, again, kept in mind moving forward. I don't think any specific benchmark or goal was set in regards to that. So I would say that, if the finance committee would like, further clarification from the board as to the goals there, we could certainly pursue getting some additional information there. But I think it was put there sort of as a placeholder, that they didn't want that as something to be forgotten moving forward. But again, at the same time, I don't think there was a specific standard or goal set as far as what level of open space is appropriate for the town.
I want to wrap this conversation up on this document, mainly because I see it as a very generic document. Notwithstanding what you've told us, Mike, it is not specific to priorities. Priorities are typically numbered. And I'll take us back to the tri-board when we had the discussion on the 4% model and how we would deal with things over and above. And what was one of the items that was discussed there was adopting the model that the capital planning committee uses to score capital planning projects. Not that they need to be doing that yet, but what was discussed is they would like to do that for operating budget items so that they could score the items. And when you score an item, you come up with a no kidding prioritized list with a number against it. This is number 1, this is number 2, based on the factors that you choose. I don't see that here. I don't want to read it against it. I am grateful that they provided this, and it's a data point for us to review the priorities or the proposal, the warrant proposal that they give us. And we can always say, well, why would you prioritize the municipal facilities director over the expanded hours of the senior center if they were to do that? In other words, why aren't they consistent with their generic municipal needs or prioritized list? But this isn't even, the document isn't even titled that. And again, not to be critical, I mean, I think perhaps you transcribed this from attending a meeting, Mike, because it is addressed from you and not from the select board. Can you clarify
Right,
that?
this was a topic of the select board meeting. They did discuss this document in front of you, and I think, again, I don't want to be inaccurate as to the purpose of this document. I think it was put out there as a framework for the board to work with.
Yep.
I don't think this is a final document from this year's budget perspective at all. You will see a much more specific priority listing from the board later this month, I would say.
Okay.
In closing, if I might,
Go ahead.
please.
Yeah, yes,
comment.
you may. Go ahead.
I'm pretty sure that open space funding, it has to do with perhaps the town helping out the conservation commission who owns like Verderber property and then that life course. And there was some vandalism at the Verderber property. And I think the town was thinking maybe it's time to help them out financially by putting in some tables and fixing up the walking trails that are there. But also, I have a real issue with the list of needs, Mr. Chair. And the second year Mr. Guzinski was in office, he stated that he really needed an HR person. And Mike, you might remember that it was taking too much of your time working with these type of issues, and there should be somebody else there to handle that and not the directors of each department. And also the IT has been acting for 3 years. And that's really so inappropriate, because a lot of issues in the town hall that I've heard firsthand from employees are unfortunately due to the lack of someone at the top level in the building half or all the time. I realized we tried to find someone and share, but we didn't. And for the life of me, I can't figure out how all of a sudden the library operation to 7 days a week, who, I'm opposed to anything being open on a Sunday, but that's me. And all of a sudden you want to expand the hours of the senior center and still drop down the HR director and the IT director. And for the life of me, I also can't figure out why, and I keep saying this, and you can mute me, is that why road construction and maintenance isn't at the top. And if I was suggesting something, I would say no hirees, except the DPW is the one that always needs a staff, but it's neglected. The police and fire, with all due respect, Mr. Chair, they get whatever they want. And and another thing, what does SB mean when it's SB/TA?
Oh, that's a select board town administrator.
Okay, I got you. That select board word is just, it's still getting used to it. But
Sorry about that. For not
those,
translating.
no, it's my bad. Those are just my thoughts on it. I really see how the town administrator is running on all ends, and things aren't getting done rightfully with a good excuse, because his expertise is not being funneled in the direction that it should be. So I'll probably be the one with, the tree trimming should be above 40 hours a week center. And DPW staff, I believe, should be up there. Thanks a lot for your time.
I would
Okay.
add one thing, Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, and not to debate the issue, because I think these are all legitimate policy points of discussion and debate. But just to update the finance committee really on an issue, is that we are in the process of, we have an intermunicipal agreement with the town of Norfolk, and we're working with them on bringing on a full-time IT person to be shared by both towns. So that is, and we have received about over 40 applications, and we're whittling down those applications as we speak. So that process is ongoing, and we hope to have someone on board fairly shortly.
Mr. Chair.
Hold on one second, Craig. I just wanted to add, and it's really just a kind of a continuation of Kathy's comments, in that, again, why I don't think this is necessarily a prioritized list. I mean, I guess it could be close, but many of these things, there are budget requests in the documents that are posted on the Finance Committee site for the FY22 budget. So there is a IT person in there to up the budget. There is a full-time HR director in there. And we will go, you certainly, I encourage you to go through those documents and review them. I got about 75% of the way through them today, looking at all of them in preparation for kicking off this cycle and this meeting, candidly. So a lot of these things are in there, and they will be discussed and likely included, at least some of them included in the FY22 budget. So I encourage you to look through those because we're going to be seeing them in the weeks to come in more depth, and you'll have an opportunity to ask the questions. You can formulate your questions in advance and ask the questions that need to be asked when those departments, brief us. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the HR position is one that I think a municipal-wide HR position I think is critical. We've talked about it. It's not glamorous. It's nothing else, but I'm going through HR issues at work right now, and having a qualified professional handling it instead of, a department head or Mike, no offense, working on it. I didn't know how much I didn't know about HR until we started having some of these issues. It really makes a world of difference. So that would be another shared position that I'd highly prioritize.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm saying this mostly because the select board is not at our meeting. They don't attend our meeting. I don't know what conduits we have to get it to the select board other than Mike reporting back or them watching us on tape. So I just wanted to get on the record that's a priority item for me personally.
and Mr. Chairman, if I may, I appreciate those comments. I think I feel I'm certainly capable of doing the work. It's just that it's too much work in order for me to do the higher level tasks I need to do, and it gets me caught down in the weeds, and that's what we're trying to do. And we can bring someone in that at a much more financial advantageous price for the town to do that work. I think it's in the interest of the town to do so. So that's why it remains a priority.
Well, doing it on a partnered basis with a neighboring town is a fantastic start. So if that works out, that's a boon, and congratulations on checking one of those off.
Thank you.
Okay, last call. We're still on track for time-wise, and I'm not going to be beholden to the clock, but if anybody has any comments on the select board's priorities, please speak up. None heard. Okay, next item. I did correspond real briefly with Mike this afternoon, and I asked him on all future warrant article updates for him to be focused on those that have changed, whether it's changed from the last briefing or changed from the original, that he focus his comments on those. I don't want him to go through at the time that I wrote the message all 32 articles, but I can see that the warrant has taken on a new life just since I asked him to do that. So Mike, it's yours. I appreciate you acknowledging our request. We really just want to be able to ask you in future meetings that you go in depth as much as you can on any changes and any questions that we may have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I want to preface my remarks by saying again, these documents really are continue to be a draft. If you look at the list that Deirdre has put on the screen, I'm just going to focus basically on the highlighted yellow items. Those are the ones that are different, I believe, or may have changed somewhat from the last time we discussed this. So I'll just go through those and then happy to answer any questions. Draft articles, and again, the items in yellow are not formally on the warrant. These are going to be reviewed by the select board at an upcoming meeting, but just want to keep the finance committee informed that these are things being considered. Articles 4 and 5, we do have the SEIU contract as well as the firefighters union contract are both expire June 30th. So we've put placeholders there. if we're able to ratify those agreements and they're complete and ready for town meeting, we'd ask that they be considered. And it's not certain we'll be at that point by then, but they're there if needed. And they, again, if they're there and we're not ready, they would just be passed over. Jumping down the chart, items 16, 17, and 18 are the items we received from the schools. I would expect that items 16 and 17 may be rolled into item 15. We've done that in the past for the previously approved leases. Generally, the new leases are done in a separate article because they need special authorization because they're considered borrowing. So they need a 2/3 vote for new leases. So again, Article 16 and 17 may get swallowed up into Article 15, but we just wanted everyone to see those, that they're there. Moving further down, item 24, the select board is going to be discussing whether or not it's appropriate for the town to be looking at a zoning bylaw for cannabis delivery. It's a new aspect of the cannabis industry in the Commonwealth that the state has recently approved. And there's some discussion as to whether there should be some bylaw in regards to that, perhaps even a short-term moratorium, if that's possible. It's something that the board is reviewing with council. So again, very early on in that discussion, but just wanted to make you aware that's possible to come on to an upcoming selectmen's meeting for discussion. Article 31, the Clyde Brown Elementary School has been eyed for solar panels to be placed on its roof. Bob Weiss, our energy manager, has been working diligently with school officials in looking at having a company come on to be able to provide reduced cost electricity to the Clyde Brown. And as often part of these projects, the company that does it looks for a pilot agreement so it can have some level of stability and certainty in its tax payments. So that's being looked at. Any pilot agreement must be approved by the town meeting. And again, we're still speaking with them and looking at the particulars of what a pilot agreement might ultimately look like. But that is there as a placeholder for that. So that is it for all the changes, I believe, from your last meeting. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that any of the members have in regards to that.
Mike, could you quickly comment on placement of new articles? I know that there's some reasoning behind, not just tacking articles onto the end and keeping them in serial. They're more or less inserted along the way. Could you just, for everybody's knowledge, speak to that briefly?
Sure. So usually we try to group the items that affect the operational budget towards the front of the warrant. And usually any business that relates to a prior fiscal year from an operational standpoint or the current fiscal year would generally be at the beginning. So we take care of any old business that needs to be wrapped up, such as unpaid bills, or any current business such as departmental transfers to balance for the end of the fiscal year. And then all the aspects of the upcoming operational budget, including costs related to ratification of contracts. And again, we do have our standard, for the most part, standard articles you find in the first probably, 13 to 15 articles tend to be fairly standard. We have our consent agenda. And then we have some of our fairly standard articles like the audit, certain operational articles we've had for many years that either come on every year or every 2 or 3 years. And then the capital usually wraps up, the major budgetary part of the annual budget process. And then we get into special articles. And again, this is traditionally how I've seen these articles listed the past 25 plus years in my career. It's pretty standard how these are done. There's no hard and fast law in regards to it. The select board has the authority to move any of these articles around as they see fit. As long as one article is not dependent on another, and sometimes that becomes critical, but for the most part, they can move those around. And then the planning, any bylaws, general bylaws, zoning bylaws that tend to be clustered together towards the back end of the agenda. And again, don't ask me exactly why that's historically done, but that's a general practice. And then street acceptances are generally back in that area as well. And then usually you wrap up at the very end of the meeting, with taking care of any last items such as OPEB, stabilization, things like that before the meeting is over. But so when new items come in, we try to put them within the kind of classification that makes sense within the framework of the warrant. But there
So
is
you're not just arbitrarily trying to make it difficult to track. I got it.
No. So we tried to add the zoning with the zoning. We tried to add, the leases near the capital items, things like that. There is somewhat of a method to the madness, but it is not a hard and fast rule.
Okay. All right. Any questions for Mike on warrant articles? Mike, schedule wise and what can we expect going forward for our discussion going forward?
Yeah, I think as far as the warrant is concerned, I think we hope to have the warrant pretty well nailed down by March 22nd. I can't guarantee it'll be signed by that date, but it should be in a form that the finance committee can really chew into it and look at it, examine it, start discussing and debating in detail the articles. And I think I'll probably have a lot more information for you, by this time next week. But we're really just trying to wrap up the last insertion or deletion of articles over the next, week or so.
Okay. When can we start? Can we start now? And who would you recommend for us to line up the parade of presentations before the finance committee?
Usually historically, I think some of the bigger departments, the fire, the police, any of the larger departments that you have a special interest in. I know the DPW budget will be presented to the select board on Monday. So certainly anytime after that, you could ask them to come in. But I mean, usually start with the larger ones and then work your way down from there. That's what I'd recommend. The school will come in when it's ready with its budget.
So that's what I'm going to do. We'll send an invite to at least Mr. McKay, and if we think we have time to do fire or police the same night, which I don't think we've done that in the past, but we will get started. And so if you want to just kind of give a heads up, and then I'll work with Deidre to get the invitations out and get people on the agenda. And if anybody has any comments along those lines, recommendations, now's the time. None heard. And I will just say, I want to get started on this, and I want us to be prepared, and I want us to ask in and dig into the budgets and scrutinize them, so that we're fulfilling our responsibilities on the committee. So that's all.
Mr. Chair.
Okay. Yep, go ahead, Doug.
So it looks like there's a lot of bylaw articles on here. Are those all, I mean, I know the cannabis delivery has an asterisk on it, but those all look like they're probably going to be on the warrant. Is that right, Mike?
Yes, I believe that the planning board is requesting that those be placed on the warrant.
So does that look like a long session with a planning board representative, or are those really pretty straightforward? That I'm just thinking in terms of numbers of meetings. I mean, Jim McKay, I don't know that we'd schedule much else on the night when Jim's coming in, given he's got the budget and he's got discussion about PFAS and the drainage. You know, there's a lot on there for him. You know, as far as I know, the police and fire are pretty straightforward, so that could be done in one night. I'm just noticing six zoning issues. It seems like a lot to me. I don't recall seeing that many in the past.
That's certainly more than usual. I think I'm looking here, we've got 4 zoning and 2 general bylaws.
Mm-hmm.
That is, you know, that's more than average for sure. You know, I couldn't speak to how complicated or how in depth those discussions would need to be. I would think that the ones involving parking are pretty straightforward and pretty quick to go over. The issue of the cannabis delivery is still up in the air. So I can't really even speak to the particulars of that. I know, you know, the solar ordinance may have some discussion attached to that. So, and certainly the bylaws having to do with the sewer is a major issue and would entail some discussion. I think the waiver of the town building project permit fees should be pretty straightforward and hopefully not too controversial. But
Mike,
yes, we do.
If I can interject, so what I'm going to propose to do is that I'll contact, set up a meeting with you and Deirdre so that we can put together a notional schedule before next week of when we would, how we will bundle these in terms of who's going to come and present, if they're all going to get presented, because we don't necessarily have to hear from every single one, and some of them are going to be lagging, you know, on the tail end of closer to town meeting. But so we'll come up with a notional schedule and we'll brief the FinCom next week on this, in addition to probably still having Mr. McKay, if he accepts the invitation, or you compel him to come and see us, you know, for next week, in addition to discussing the rest of the schedule. Is that, Doug, do you think that scratches the itch?
Well, Mr. Chair, it's up to you, but I was just expressing my observations.
Yep, and I just want to address.
I think what you proposed makes perfect sense.
Okay, super. Anybody else? Okay. Next up, Mike, we're all done with warrant discussion. We're going to move on to the FinCom Policies and Procedures Subcommittee. So I heard from several people on this. I have at least 3 volunteers, and I may have missed one. I'll put Katie on the spot. Katie, were you a volunteer to participate?
I was not officially.
Okay, all right. No, I don't mean to put you on the spot. I just I can't recall my Zoom chats that were going on in the background of last week's meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely have a volunteer in Joyce. I believe I have one in Jody, and I know I have one in Sean. So that leaves one member that can participate without establishing a quorum. So my proposal is that we have Joyce, Jody, and Sean with possibly one other member if they want to step up and participate. And the other thing that I was going to add or encourage that the committee do is that they consider enlisting the help of some former finance committee members emeritus. And the two that come to mind just since I've been on the finance committee is Rich Malloy and Miss Vecchi. Not necessarily that they're, you certainly could ask them to participate in your meetings or your discussions, but the way I foresee this happening is the committee meets, they come up with a framework and an outline of what they want to address, and then outline the actual document. They begin drafting, and then once they're get to a certain phase in the drafting, that they actually send the document out for review, and that could be with somebody that has some additional outside looking in and some experience being on the finance committee. That's just an idea. It might be hokey. I don't know. I don't think it could hurt, but nobody has said that they're willing to give their time, after being on the committee anyway. And then once that's done, then the document comes back to the finance committee for formal discussion. And one of the first things I would ask that the subcommittee do is come up with the timeline. And I would like to see the document back to the committee on the agenda for review no more than, say, 4 weeks from now. That includes, your discussions and drafting and review, and more or less in the 80 to 90% complete phase or progress. So that's a proposal. I would open it up to everybody else to come up with some alternate proposals or modify that, or just tell me that it's the greatest idea they've ever heard.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Jody.
So I will save some stress on some folks here by saying that I do actually have a draft document already put together based on what the select board has drafted, tailored to the finance committee. It's pretty well, with a little bit more tweaking, ready to go to the subcommittee for discussion and additions and what have you. It is right now at 10 pages, and it basically outlines, it discusses our function in operating the reserve fund, or how that works, and the different how we conduct meetings, what's our role at town meeting, that type of thing. So I think that 4 weeks is probably a realistic timeline, because I have put significant time into, already drafting something. I think it's basically a policies and procedures manual, which will be on the town website. I have also taken some time to write up something that is more colloquial, that might be helpful for new members coming on, but that is longer and would take a lot longer to kind of edit. But this policies and procedures manual, I think, is the most important thing, because in looking at what's actually written down in the town documents, it's kind of appalling how little is written. Basically 2 paragraphs. So I definitely see this as an imperative to really have these items written down, and I'd certainly be willing to serve on this, the subcommittee to do this, and certainly willing to propose this draft for further review and editing to kind of get us down the road a ways.
Okay, well, Jody, that all sounds great, and I want to say thank you for doing the work. I don't know that we need to vote on the committee members or subcommittee members, but that's what the agenda says, so that's what we're going to do. But before we do that, I just want to, obviously we would have to hear a motion, but if there's any, prior to a motion, if there's any other comments that would possibly shape that motion, I'd like to hear them now.
Well, I do have a question. As
Go ahead,
far
Joyce.
as thank you. As far as this policies and procedures, getting together and everything, the three of us can get together, but and I know you said time frame 4 weeks. When are you anticipating us getting together? Evening,
That
I mean,
is-
I don't know anyone's schedule.
Yeah, I would leave that to the committee members to communicate about, and I wouldn't be part of that discussion. You guys can figure that out.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I was just going to make one suggestion, possibly. If Jody has an index that lists all the topics that are in her document, it might be good to send that out early to see if there's anything that, and I doubt there is, but if anything is missing or that we'd like to see included, since we've got an abbreviated time frame, I think 4 weeks is quite achievable that Jody's put together. But if there's something that's missing or a topic that should be addressed, if there's just even an index, just to see what topics are covered in there, it might be helpful. If it doesn't exist, then I'll rescind the request. But if there is something that gives it a little index of what's in there, the items, that would be helpful, I think, to look at. So they can spend the most time in their 4 weeks.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Jody.
The nice thing is I have indexing capabilities on this Word document, so I can compress it and do a PDF and send that out.
Just see if there's any glaring missing so you can spend your 4 weeks and not have to spend another 3 weeks adding stuff. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Not a problem.
Thank you.
Super. Okay. Any other volunteers or nominations for membership of within the finance committee? So there's room for one without having quorum, and I think that's kind of a showstopper, having more than 4. Okay, none heard. I will take a motion.
I'll move we form the what is it we're calling it, the Finance Committee Policy and Procedure Handbook Subcommittee with the members as enumerated by the chair.
And that was Joyce, Jody, and Sean.
Because I couldn't remember if Katie was on or not.
Second.
I have a second. And so any discussion? None heard. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay? Any abstentions? Great. Okay, terrific. Get started, get to work. It sounds like maybe we'll come back to you in 2 or 3 weeks and ask for an update on you. But again, Jody, thank you very much for stepping up. And it doesn't surprise me that you've got, you're well down the road on that. So thank you very much. Old business, new business. I just wanted to mention one thing that I kind of cut us off a little earlier, or kind of curtailed discussion. And that is on the 61A property discussion and the hearing. I want to make sure that, and I really, I want to highly recommend that we do our homework on this. If you did not attend the hearing or you did not watch the video of it, it is recorded. It is on the town website under the kind of the minutes, the committee meeting minutes, not necessarily on the select board direct site. That we all take some time and I think it's about 90 minutes that we take the time to listen to that so that we can have a discussion on that, more informed and deliberate discussion on that for next week. I'm going to endeavor to have that as an agenda item, and we can have some discussion on it. So that's what I have for kind of new business. Is there any old or new business from the rest of the committee? Okay, none heard. That brings us to minutes.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Jody.
I move that we accept the meeting minutes of February 24th as written.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the meeting minutes for the meeting held on February 24th. Discussion? I'll just add that that's probably the longest and most thorough minutes that I've read in a long time. Deirdre, a lot of work went into that. Thank you very much. All
welcome.
those in favor, say aye.
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 Nay, any nays? And any abstentions? Okay, you have all that, Deirdre?
Yes, I do.
Okay, great. So that wraps up just about everything on the agenda for tonight. Next meeting would be on the 10th of March, likely 7 o'clock. No reason to change that I know of. And I will take a motion.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Moved and second to adjourn. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All right, everybody, we'll hear from you next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a
Thanks.
good night.
See ya.
You too.